All right, so I'm just gonna kind of ramble a little bit. It might get a little bit weird, but I'm gonna kind of describe a little bit of why I think I have this kind of like intuition that reality is like a dream and it can give you signs. So like I remember when I won the AU National Championship when I was 9 years old. I was considered one of the best players in the country, and I remember before every game. This is in AU Nationals when I was 9 years old. I don't think I played that good in AU Nationals when I was 9, but we still won the AU National Championship. But I remember every time, like I wish I had the videos, but like I said, I think I had the videos, but they weren't great videos, so my dad didn't keep them because my dad was superficial. I could have benefited a lot from them. I could say swag flow. I'm not gonna go into details, but anyways, I had some of the videos, I think, but anyways, before every game, I remember there was a penny on its head of Abraham Lincoln, a shiny Abraham Lincoln penny in my hotel room. And before every game, I would go to the penny and I would look at it, and I think I would even touch it. And then we won every game except for one. We actually lost a game, but we still won the AU National Championship. We lost a game in pool play, but we still won the AU National Championship. So that was in Tennessee. And then but like I said, my mom was at that tournament, and my mom, every time I would lay down on the bed and stuff, my mom, like, things were great with my family growing up because I was the best, so they loved me, and they didn't really like my sister because my sister wasn't the best, but I was the best, so my family loved me. There was never any problems. But I remember I would lay down before the games, and my mom would be like, "Ryan, don't lay down. You're gonna get wrinkles on your shirt. You're gonna get wrinkles on your shirt." And my dad was like, "Marlis, who cares?" And my mom said, it doesn't matter how you play. What matters is how you look. That's like a classic narcissistic thing to say, but my mom might have been that way, right? And I remember my dad got mad at my mom, and my mom started to cry because my mom has mental issues, dude. What kind of person, she said, "You're gonna get wrinkles on your shirt. Oh, your wrinkles. Oh, it doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter how you play. It matters how you look." Like, that's like a very sick thing to say. Like, all that matters is how you look. But and I'll get a little bit more into stuff like that. But then, okay, so then I was playing with P. Miller Ballers. This is in the 9th grade. But anyways, I ended up winning the AU National Championship as a 9-year-old in Tennessee. Okay, and before every game, I would touch the penny that was in my room. Now, did that have an effect? Again, if reality is like a dream, maybe the penny being there did have an effect. It's like a sign, and it's now the rational people would say, "Well, yeah, it has an effect because when you touch the penny, it takes pressure off yourself. It's like an obsessive compulsive thing. It takes pressure off yourself. So then you could actually play better because then you feel like there's a higher power involved. So then you let go more and you're more loose and then you're more in the flow." And that's a rational way of looking at it. But I'm also open to the magical understanding of it. Okay, so then now people will be like, "Oh, that's magic." My grandpa would probably be like, "That's magical thinking." Well, maybe the world's fucking magical, dude. And that's why I never understood the quadrant model. That's why he never accepted the quadrant model, because he was like, "That's magical thinking to think that there's a fourfold pattern and that's magical. Everything's energy, and yeah, you can manipulate energy, but that's not magic. That's science. But no, the idea that there's a fourfold pattern and that's magical thinking." No, yeah, well maybe reality's magical. You fucking come on, man. He's not open to the truth, is the way I saw it. But anyways, so I remember when I was playing with the P. Miller Ballers. Now, this is going to kind of give a little bit of an understanding of the way that my mindset was, in that I saw myself as Jewish, and this could be a magical type of thing. Like, and I felt like I played better seeing myself as Jewish because I saw myself as more black. So whenever I played, I always imagined myself to be more black. And I think I played better that way because, the rational explanation is, well, because you imagine yourself as black, and that's a stereotype bias, and that makes you play better because that's a stereotype bias, and also because it lets you let go a little bit more, and then you can be more in the flow, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that could be a part of the reason, but regardless, I saw myself as Jewish, and I saw myself as more black, and I felt like that made me play better when I saw myself as black. So I was playing with P. Miller Ballers. Everybody on the team was black except me. But I didn't see myself as black because I saw myself as Jewish. So there was also a Mexican guy on the team, but the Mexican guy was arguing with the black guys, and he was saying that, like, Jesus was brown, and he was like, brown people are smart. He was like, you black people are stupid. All you guys are good at is sports. And then the black people were like, no, Jesus is black. But a couple of black people were like, no, Jesus was white, dude. Jesus was white. They were kind of like the Uncle Toms. But then they asked me, they're like, hey, Ryan, was Jesus white or black? And I said, Jesus was like me. Jesus was Jewish. Now, like I said, my whole life I saw myself as more black. And also, my whole life I kind of looked down upon white people. And I think it's because it's a Jewish thing where you see like white people as responsible for the Holocaust. And I saw myself as more black. And I was anti-white my whole life. So I always kind of looked down upon white people. And so when they asked like, but when I think about it though, was I pro-black and anti-white? More so I was more pro-Jewish. And I think, you know, when I hear the white supremacists like, yeah, the Jews just like blacks because the blacks are a bioweapon against the whites who are the Jews' biggest enemy. And I think that there was some accuracy to that because I remember they asked me, so I wasn't like, oh, Jesus was, if I was a black supremacist, I would have been like, Jesus is black. Yeah, Jesus is black. But I was like, no, Jesus is Jewish. He looked like me. And I remember, because like I said, my whole life I saw myself as the Messiah ever since I was in preschool. So I remember when like I heard that, you know, I was studying like on YouTube. This is probably in like college, and they would talk about like Jesus had white, you know, hair white as wool and stuff. And I would imagine like probably when I get older, I'm gonna look like that. Or, you know, or he would say like hair like wool. And I was like, I kind of have curly hair. I was like, yeah, I'm probably, because they would talk about the Son of Man and how he would talk to the prophets and he had, you know, hair like wool. And I was like, and black people be like, yeah, that's Afro hair. That's Afro. And I'd be like, well, I kind of have an Afro a little bit. So I would think like, I'm the Messiah. I'm the one who was talking to the prophets. And I still think that to this day. I want to make a time machine and I want to be the one who talks to the prophets and stuff like that. I do think that I'm the Messiah. I discovered theory of everything. And they say that the Messiah goes in the Merkaba vehicle. And that's my name, Merk. So it's possible. But I remember that my teammates were like, this is P. Miller Ballers. This is Master P's basketball team. He's the richest, like the richest rapper in history. And Romeo was on the team. We had a lot of NBA players on the team. But we were at the hotel room and my teammates were like, Ryan, it was Jesus white or black? And I said, he's Jewish. He looked like me. So, and what's the other thing that's interesting is I remember there was some girls in the apartment or in the hotel room next to us, and they came into our room, and then the black guys were all trying to hit on them because the black guys try to have sex with anything that moves, including the Mexican guy. Black people and Mexican people, but especially black people. But that was my experience. They try to have sex with anything. So there's these two white girls, and the black guys were all trying to have sex with them. But then at the time, I'm not gonna go into details, but I had a lot of swag flow. And but I didn't know I had swag flow, but now I know, because I never knew why all the girls liked me when I was growing up. I had fan clubs of girls, literally. But like I said, I always saw myself as a Messiah, and I didn't want to have sex because I saw myself as a Messiah. And also later, my grandpa would teach me about how the self is an illusion and stuff, and how sex is self-confirmatory and all that type of stuff, right? So I was always thinking to myself, I'm going to wait till I'm married to have sex. So people would be like, you know, Ryan, the hottest. I remember like my friend Brandon, he got me this really hot girl, really hot blonde girl. And she wanted to have sex with me. And I got her number and everything. And she hooked up with me in a movie theater and she wanted to have sex with me. But I never got back to her because in my mind I was like, I'm the Messiah. I can't have sex. And I remember these two white girls were with the P. Miller Ballers. You know, DeMar DeRozan's on the team. Brandon Jennings. A lot of dudes who played in the NBA were on the team. But I don't remember their names. But and we were on Nickelodeon. But I remember, but at the time my shot was messed up because that was the time my dad had got the shoot away machine and destroyed my shot. So I wasn't even really playing in the games. The coach would only put me in at the end of the games. So because my game was so messed up at that point, but I was still the starting point guard on varsity as a freshman at Harvard Westlake when we won the CIF championship. But anyways, you know, the players on our team were like, everybody on the team's going to play in the NBA. We were the best team in the country. They wanted me to go with them to play in AU Nationals, but I didn't want to play with them because I wanted to go to Kauai. I described that. And that's when I started to study a lot with my grandpa. But we're going back to the story. The girls were being hit on by the black guys, right? But then the girls looked at me, and then the two girls, these are like two white girls, are probably attractive. They're like, he's cute, and they're pointing at me. They're like, he's really cute. And I remember I was just kind of like sitting there like, because I've always been super shy. I barely ever talk. People, that's the thing about me is like, I remember like when I was playing at Harvard Westlake as a freshman, I went with this guy, Ed White. He was like the John Wooden Player of the Year. And see, people might think because they hear me talking on these things, they might think I might talk a lot. If you met me in real life, I never talk. Sometimes I'll just be completely silent for hours. even when I'm around a bunch of people. So like I remember Ed White drove me to like this game that was in like 2-hour drive, probably like Irvine or Orange County or something, right? And he was telling all my teammates, he was like, dude, we drove for 2 hours and Ryan didn't say one word because I didn't talk. I would just be sitting like this because I barely ever talk. But so the girls were like, he's cute, and they're talking about me like he's cute. But I was just sitting there, and I was just like, because again, in my mind though too, I'm like, I'm not gonna reciprocate because I know I'm not gonna have sex with these girls because I'm the Messiah. That's the way I always saw it. Since I was a little kid, that was always in the back of my mind. I'm the Messiah. I always saw that. Everything, it kind of flavored everything I did in my life. So like I said, when I'm playing with the P. Miller Ballers, when I'm winning AU national championships, when I'm getting 4th place at AU national championships, when I'm MVP in all these sports, when I'm doing all these amazing things, when every teacher loves me, in my whole mind, I'm thinking my whole time, I'm the Messiah. I know I'm going to be doing this. I'm the Messiah. I know. It's not a big deal. Of course I won the AU national championship. Of course I won the CIF championship, and I'm a starting point guard on varsity as a freshman. Of course I did this. I'm the Messiah. So I'm just sitting there, and the girls are like, he's cute. And they're looking at me like, he's really cute. But, you know, I had a lot of swag flow at the time. I'm not going to get a detail. And now I know why they liked me. But again, I didn't say anything. And then so when the girls left, my teammates were like, they're like, Ryan, are you gay, dude? These are all these black kids. They're like, Ryan, are you gay? They're like, these girls were saying you're hot and you didn't even do nothing. But in my mind, I was like, you know, you guys are just like hypersexual. So again, like, I think there was kind of a little bit of racism because in my mind, I was thinking this. I was thinking, so like I said, I always saw myself as Jewish, and I was kind of always anti-white and kind of pro-black. But at the same time, I saw Jews as superior. So, and also in my mind, I was like, yeah, but I'm also not like super hypersexual like you black people. That's the way that I was looking at it. I was like, yeah, but you guys are like super hypersexual, like you. And I don't want to say like animals, but you know, because it might not be biological. It could be because I grew up in the ghetto and stuff like that. But I was just like, I'm not super hypersexual like you guys. You know, I was like, because I'm Jewish, and Jews aren't like, we don't act as animalistic as you guys. That's the way I was thinking about it. So yes, my whole life I was anti-white and I was more pro-black. But at the same time, when I think about it, I was actually a Jewish supremacist. So I'll get to that. But I always did look more highly upon black people. So, but that's important for me to distinguish that. And because I have to understand what was going on in my psyche. Okay. So, but like I saw myself as Jewish, and I'm like, I'm the Messiah. That's the way I saw myself the whole life. So then when I get into college, like I said, I'm at UCSD, and my grandpa was teaching me all the metapsychiatry, how the body's an illusion, the self is an illusion, all this stuff, right? But like I said, I was always kind of a leftist. I was always anti-white. So I would try to, so when my grandpa would be talking about, you know, transcendental consciousness, I didn't understand. I was like, yeah, I love that. Because in my mind, I'm thinking transcendentalistic consciousness. Yeah, let's all race mix. That's what I thought, transcendentalism. Like, let's not be separate. Let's be one. Let's all race mix. But I didn't realize that was actually my ego. And transcending dualistic consciousness, according to my grandpa, would be transcending the ego. So you can see things, because the ego clouds your perception. So if I transcend dualistic consciousness, I transcend the self, my body, so I can see things pure awareness. And I wouldn't necessarily be for race mixing or against race mixing. I'd be open and receptive to the truth, which isn't necessarily either one of those. But at the time, I didn't know that. So I'm like, yeah, transcend dualistic consciousness. Yeah, let's all race mix. That's the way I want to see it. And so like when I would study about the Hebrews, like I would study Hebrew means to cross over. So I'd be like, yeah, that means to cross out of because my grandpa would be talking about getting out of your comfort zone. Because my grandpa would say the flow is not the comfort zone, because the comfort zone is self-confirmatory. So my grandpa would say, when you're in the flow, it's like you're the fiddler on the roof. You're on the roof and you're playing the violin. And my grandpa would say that's not a comfort zone. He's on the roof. He's in a precarious situation. He's stepping beyond. He's stepping outside of his comfort zone. And my grandpa would say there's no safety net. Now, again, later I would think like, yeah, this is white supremacy talk, like against the safety net and against, wanting everyone to just work hard. And, I kind of had that interpretation, but my grandpa would be like, no, this is, what it's about is being a fiddler on the roof and just getting out of your comfort zone and going all out so that you could be open to the flow and let go of all attachment so you could be open to the flow, to the truth, to transcend the ego, right? So But at the time, I didn't really understand it. So when I'm like studying about the Hebrews and it means crossover, I'm like, yeah, that's like the black people, crossing out of the comfort zone, And I'm thinking, yeah, the white people, they're comfortable because white supremacy but the black people and the Jews, yeah, we were slaves and we had to step out of our comfort zone. And so again, I was always kind of a leftist and always kind of anti-white. But again, was I pro-black? Kind of, but at the same time, I think I was just mainly pro-Jewish, and maybe the white supremacists are right. I wanted the black people to be a bioweapon against the white people, but I always saw myself as more black. So whenever I would see black people, I would imagine myself to be black like them, because I saw the Jews as more black. And like I said, that also helped me with basketball. Like when I imagined myself to be black, and I felt like I played better with basketball, and also my rap music. So I was always more pro-black, and I wanted race mixing. So. So I'll get to a little bit more of how this happened, about how this manifested in college, next lectures.